Hi, everybody, and welcome once again. We are on location at the Peacock Alley American Grill and Bar for the Legislature Today radio show. Busy program for you straight ahead, and looking forward to it. Want to thank our sponsors, by the way, and they are making this broadcast possible 2 hours, Monday through Thursday evenings on your radio, as well as Saturdays between 10 a.m. and noon. The Credit Union Association of the Dakotas, the Association of Oil and Gas Producing Counties, the University of Mary, America's Leadership University. Tonight, a new sponsor joins us as well. That will be the North Dakota Corn, Grain, and Soybean Growers Association, and we appreciate them very much as well. We also thank our sponsors, the North Dakota Rural Electric Cooperatives, Touchstone Energy Cooperatives, and their partners, Minnkota Power, serves customers in the east and eastern end of North Dakota, as well as western Minnesota, as well as Great River Energy. Expressway Inn and Suites, and the North Dakota chapter of Concerned Women for America, along with the host for our event, the folks here at the Peacock Alley American Grill and Bar. And Dale, I know you appreciate the various specials they have.
Oh, of course.
You tend to comment occasionally on that. It's Political Wing Night tonight.
Political Wing Night?
Yes. So these are the freshest locally sourced wings in the game.
As long as you don't put, nuts in with them.
There's left wings and right wings.
And there's wing nuts.
Now the left wings are breaded, fresh chicken wings, liberally spun in your choice of sauce. You spread the wealth and order enough for the entire table, and feel good knowing you've got your fair share. I guess MSNBC would give them 4 stars.
Okay.
Now the right wings, on the other hand, are naked. Naked fresh chicken wings. This naked is okay.
Okay.
Spun in a no-spin zone with your choice of sauce, and you can get indulge a little your taste for more wings.
So the right wings don't have any skin on them?
I guess not. Yep.
So the dietary conscious would go for the right wing, huh?
Fox News would give them 2 thumbs up.
Okay.
They're telling us, yeah. And they use the free market system and came up with a socialistic price. I don't know what that means, but anyway, all wings are not created equal. But on Thursdays they're only $5. They're all the same price. So you get 10 wings for $5. And I think that's
that's positively Karl Marxian, I think.
And that's something. And so in other words, it's a great deal. In fact, you get more wings for the price than you do at Wing Night at the Buffalo Wild Wings. So this is a really good deal. I guess the wings are I've not yet had them. I'm looking at this brand new. So anyway.
Well, I'm sure by the end of the night we'll have the sauce smeared all over us.
We'll be sampling them. You might want to watch that at GreatPlainsNews.com. Exactly right. Anyway, looking forward to another hour. We'll quickly recap what happened in the legislature today with Dale Wetzel, managing editor for Great Plains Examiner and Great Plains News, and then introduce our guests.
Well, we had our first bill today that was signed by the governor. It was rather interesting and quick production. It had to do with the legislature's bill tracking service, which is a new service. It used to be provided by North Dakota State University for a fee, a rather steep fee, as I remember. It's like $300 or $400 for a session. And as part of their overhaul of the computer system, the legislature instituted its own bill tracking system, which it offers to the public for free. And as people were loading in order to take advantage of it, you have to have a username and a logon. And roughly 1,200 people have registered to use the service. And the question arose, if a person is logged on, has a username and logon, has a list of bills that he or she is tracking, writes in comments and bill descriptions, which you can do on this site, is that information a public record? And as soon as the realization that it might be a public record came to light, the majority leaders in the House and Senate introduced a bill saying that it is an exempt record, which means they can give it to you, but they don't have to, and they won't, I'm sure. They meaning the Legislative Council, which is the legislature's research arm. And this bill passed the House yesterday, 94-zip. It passed the Senate today, 40-7. There was some objection to it on the Senate floor because in neither the House nor the Senate did it have a hearing. And one of the senators, Connie Triplett from Grand Forks, said that you should vote against this bill because it, essentially as a protest to the fact that the hearing process was skipped over. Well, anyway, after the Senate approved the bill, it was enrolled and sent over to the House and made its way down to the governor. It was signed just before 4 p.m. and it has an emergency clause, which means it takes effect immediately. So right now, as we speak today, these records, this information, people's profiles and logins and passwords and whatnot, are not public record. That was the first bill that we've had that passed the House and Senate and was signed by the governor, has to do with the legislature's bill tracking system.
Not exactly monumental legislation, but
not really
unusual in how it was fast-tracked, maybe?
Yes, that's very unusual. I've never seen anything like that before, where the bill literally has no hearing, except, there are some exceptions. I mean, the legislative pay resolution doesn't have a hearing, and that's how they figure out who gets paid what. The people who work for the legislature, they're listed by name, and actually they're listed by position and how much they get paid, and that's not there are certain circumstances where a bill doesn't have a hearing, but it's almost never something like this where it's actually something that's going to go into the law books, which this will do. There are some other things that were interesting today. One of the oil bills in the legislature would give an exemption from the North Dakota oil extraction tax, which is 6.5%, to oil that's refined in a North Dakota refinery, oil that's produced in North Dakota and refined in a North Dakota refinery. And that sounds good on the surface, but basically what it was frankly, an enormous tax break for the Tesoro refinery in Mandan, which they did not ask for and did not lobby for. They just the bill came out and they said, basically, well, what? Because Tesoro is refining all the North Dakota oil it can get its hands on, and there is no prospect in the near future for an oil refinery to start operating again. Another one. The 3 affiliated tribes is developing a refinery. In fact, they have their final permits for one, but it's going to take some time to build. MDU Resources Group is looking into constructing a refinery in southwestern North Dakota, but that's a long way off. And the argument that was made on the House floor was the refinery problem is not a problem of taxation. It's not, people are not building refineries in North Dakota because North Dakota has these onerous taxes. It's because it's difficult from a regulatory standpoint to get approval to build a refinery. Lots of environmental permits, et cetera, it just takes a long time. And so that bill was defeated 94-0.
Very interesting. By the way, Dale Wetzel is covering his 14th legislative session, so that's why you can get a recap that quick on what's happening. We try to keep you updated on what's happening and keep tabs on lots of bills, and always start each hour of the Legislature Today radio show.
Did you think that was quick? I thought it was kind of long-winded, actually.
It was good information.
Okay.
As always, you're a wonderful resource. But we better get to our guests because we do have a short amount of time to visit with the 3 gentlemen here, including John Godfread, who is the Vice President for Government Affairs at the Greater North Dakota Chamber. He is brought along today Representative Mike Nathe, Republican from Bismarck, Chair of the House Education Committee, as well as Craig Headland, a Republican from Stutzman County and the Vice Chair of Education as well. So, gentlemen, welcome. And question,
Craig, you might add, Craig is on the Finance and Tax Committee, which is where the real action is these days.
That's actually what you're vice chair of, isn't it? Yeah, I messed that up. So, education and the all-important taxation.
Actually, I'm not on education.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't really mess
Come
with it.
on,
What's your other committee?
Get with the program, pal.
I'm on the tax committee.
All right, sounds good.
That little book you got next to you, look at it.
I have my app, too, by the way, now. Anyway, I didn't use it, obviously. So, anyway, Dale Wetzel, managing editor, take it away for the questioning for these gentlemen on our issue of the hour.
Well, one of the big issues in the legislature is taxation, property taxation, income taxation for individuals and corporations, sales taxation. I imagine we'll see some sales tax exemption bills, or maybe even rate reduction bills. What do you gentlemen see as the major tax proposals in the legislature?
Well, I think there's been proposals, I don't know, that we've looked at, and we were proposing a 1/3 reduction in all classes of taxes. So your income, your corporate, and your property tax as well. That's one thing that we were trying to push. I think a bill has been introduced. If by Representative Headland is a good start for us, and that's where we like, and that's probably something we'll be supporting. That's a 35% reduction across the board for individual income and corporate tax. I think that's a good start, and then. We also brought along Representative Nathe because he's the chair of the Education Committee, and really in the past, that's where the property tax discussions we had. It's not something that I think we were in total love with the mill levy reduction program that we're in right now. It's kind of the best thing that's around, and it's one thing we've had to support, but it's we're looking for different alternatives. And
what sort of alternatives are you looking for?
well, I think you heard some of those in the governor's address in the State of the State, looking at injecting it into the school formula somehow, working some of those avenues. I think those are something that we'll look at, and I think we can definitely support something that would get us untied from mills. Because right now we're sitting with an automatic inflator, if you will. Every time your valuation goes up, what the legislature did the last session costs more. So, and it's not sustainable, and that's kind of where we've been at since the beginning. But it's, like I said, it was the best program around, and we couldn't come up with an alternative. So,
what do you think are the big tax issues this session?
That's digging pretty deep.
Oh, man.
I do think it is property tax. I think it's property tax. Again, I think the Measure 2 issue has brought that to the forefront. I think the legislature has heard that loud and clear. The vehicle right now in the House we're talking about to address that, help address the property tax issue, is the K-12, the governor's K-12 bill. And it's $714 million. The bill just came out yesterday. And as a result of that, taxpayers should see a significant decrease in their property tax.
Craig, you have some tax proposals, some tax bills of your own. Do you care to describe those?
Well, I do. Thank you, Dale. And yes, I believe the House is concerned with the level of the mill levy reduction grants in the past and the unsustainability in that area. So we are supportive looking at incorporating it into the education funding formula. However, we're interested in providing tax relief to our citizens in other ways, through income tax, through corporate reductions, our financial institutions reductions. So I put together a plan that will reduce revenues, both in individual and corporate tax, by 35%. I think we're at a time where we see how much the increase has occurred in this biennium, and moving forward, I don't think we see the need to keep collecting that money from the citizens. So our goal is to pass what we feel is a fair package, and I think we all understand this is early in the session. A lot of things have to come together before this package will be complete. But at the end of the day, we're going to provide broad property tax and income tax relief to all citizens in North Dakota.
The 35%, what does that apply to, please?
35% against the projected revenue for the 13-15 biennium. Okay. I think the
and this is accomplished by doing what again, please?
Well, it reduces rates, and what we've done
income tax rates.
Income tax rates, both in individual and corporate tax.
Ms. Schmalenberger, first of all, tell us how you came to be the warden. Tell us about your corrections career.
Well, I've worked for the Department of Corrections for a number of years in various capacities. I started as a parole and probation officer, and I did that for a number of years. And then I transitioned into reentry work with transitioning inmates out of prison, and I was the director of our transitional facilities. And then from that position, I am now the warden of the North Dakota State Penitentiary.
We wanted to talk to you this evening about the expansion project, which people drive by. If you live in the Bismarck area, even if you don't, people drive by, they see it going up. What is the status of it right now?
It's going very well. As you drive by an expressway, you can get a good view of it, and you can see that the external structures are up. And right now they're focusing on doing a lot of the internal finish work, that type of thing. So we're on schedule to be complete in April of 2013. And then once the facility is complete, we'll slowly start transitioning inmates into the various housing units that are being constructed.
Ron, you were in the House when this project was essentially being born.
That's correct.
And could you just tell us why it was deemed to be necessary by the legislature? Why is it that the legislature decided that this was worth doing?
Well, the project, Dale, and hi, Robyn, and welcome to the show with me. Safety was the number one concern with the old East Cell House. It was 4 stories tall, and they start inmates out there. The 4th floor, it was hot in the summer, cold in the winter. As they minded their P's and Q's. They moved them down to 3, 2, 1. The cells did not meet any of the present-day requirements. I think they're literally about 8 by 8. Some of our concerns were about the safety, for sure, with the guards who had to do that. The seg wing, the segregation wing, where they lock prisoners down for a variety of reasons, violent prisoners, 23 hours a day. The bars used to be open, so when we would tour, the times we toured, the inmate literally could throw feces if he wanted, or he could make remarks, especially if there was a female. So there was a lot of design work to be done. So several of us went down to Cass County, Fargo, and Representative Whelan at that time, Cass County Commissioner. This pod design, as you see out on the new one, it's way easier to manage inmates, and again, safety of the people that are doing the job out there. And they're 3 shifts, 24/7, as you know. So we started putting projects together and then doing some repairs. Well, then finally somebody got up the idea, let's just put the money aside. Well, the first round we got money aside, I think it was in the 40 million range, and we literally parked it while people talked it over and mulled it over when you do a big project like that. And then the next session, then we got construction, and I just got some numbers from this. I'm on appropriations over in the Senate now too. So as of December 31st, out of the 63 million, I think you folks have spent about 54. There's roughly 9.6 million left to spend. We were looking at April 2013. You say possibly May, but I had several lawmakers. They would certainly like a tour before you move the inmates.
Tom Lilja is Executive Director of the North Dakota Corn Growers Association, as well as Scott Rising, who is North Dakota Soybean Growers Association Legislative Director, as well as a soybean grower himself, and Brad Thykeson. Brad is the President of the North Dakota Grain Growers Association and himself a grower from Portland, North Dakota. So, gentlemen, welcome to the program. Nice to have you. This is an exciting time to get ag issues from the perspective of corn, soybean, and grain growers covered on the program, and we're glad to have you.
Thank you, Scott. Good to be here.
Dale Wetzel, our managing editor for Great Plains News and the Great Plains Examiner, has some questions, I'm sure.
I guess, gentlemen, the first question is, what sort of issues are you interested in during the legislative session? What are your top priorities? What are the things what is your bill tracking list? What are the things you're going to be following?
You're looking at me, Dale, so I'll go first.
Certainly.
All right.
Plus, you have the most exotic name.
Is that right?
Mr. Thykeson.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Grain growers, issue that's kind of come to surface since the oil boom is the dust issue out in the western North Dakota. We had a board meeting out there last March and realized that, generally in North Dakota we have dust issues during a harvest season or out of the back end of a combine or during a beet season, or that's kind of a short-lived issue. The people in western North Dakota have to deal with dust issues, 365 days out of the year, and that's something that we want some recognition. We're working hard to get some money to implement to do some type of dust suppression type of thing. Another thing that grain growers are watching, and this is probably my passion, would be water management. We've been working on that since 2009. We're working with NRCS to try streamline the process when it comes to defining and certifying wetlands. In the eastern side of the state, tiling has taken off in big fashion since 2009 with the rise of commodity prices. And with that process, we're finding a lot of hurdles that we have to jump over through the government regulations, and that's a long, ongoing process. I want to put a plug in here for Mary Podell. She's our state conservationist right now. She understands that there's some issues and that she's willing to address them, and she's willing to work with grower groups and put on informational meetings that will help correct this problem.
Could you please explain what tiling is?
Tiling is actually not anything new. It's new to North Dakota because traditionally we've been an arid state. The I-states, I would say, in fact, in Minnesota, the soil conservation districts actually put in clay tile years ago in order to move the water under the ground, from a problematic spot into a water channel that would, relieve that water pressure in the field. Technology, due to the plastics, due to the laser technology, due to GPS, has all of a sudden made it beneficial and very economical, and with the rise of commodity prices. And now with our wet system moving further north in our corn belt and soybeans that are being grown, along with these higher value crops, this has given, the farmers a new avenue. I personally think that the yield monitor in the combine is the driving force behind it. Years ago we used to think, the field ran 50 bushels to the acre, and, that was the general field. Well, now we take the analysis out of that yield data monitor, and we look and we say, why is this spot only giving me 25 bushels to the acre? What's going on there? And in this last climate cycle, it's been because it's gotten wet feet or that it's got water issues. So we can alleviate that water pressure through the technology of tiles.
What is the purpose of tiling? Why do people do it?
It's to improve yield. It's to improve yield and soil health. Salinity has been a big issue.
And how does that happen?
How does it happen? The pipe gets buried in the ground, and we're using, like in a lot of cases, we're using a pattern tile on the eastern side where it's a lot flatter. You're burying a 4-inch tile line using gravity to bring it to a collection spot. Either it's going to go into a water channel like a coulee or a creek, or you're going to use some type of control structure to hold back that water. And I think that's the message that we have to get out there to producers, is that if you're going to go to the expense of it, use it to manage water. In a case like 2012, managing water was utmost essential to have our good production year in North Dakota.
So it's a way to drain your field, excess water?
To manage the water in the field. I'm not going to say drain. I'm going to say manage, because if we can put in the control structures, we can manage that water to what the crop's needs are.
Does it help you store water for later use?
Without a doubt. And you can even do some sub-irrigation if you can have a spot in the field that has a spring in it or whatever, and by holding back that water, you can use the underground tile to get water to deficient spots in the field.
Scott Rising, the director of the North Dakota, or the legislative director of the North Dakota soybean growers, what sort of legislative priorities does your organization have?
Well, for the most part, we're looking forward, as most organizations do, and we're focusing on ag research and extension efforts, along with infrastructure across our state, which involves roads and bridges and water.
And what is the outlook right now for the North Dakota soybean industry?
The history of it is to be a real growth industry, and we look for that to continue in the future, Dale. 2 years ago, when we were here at the legislature, I remember standing up, testifying and talking about the fact that we had produced $1 billion soybean crop, and that contributes multiplied to the North Dakota economy across our state. And I noticed the other day when I was talking, I was using the term $2 billion. I mean, it's just a really great, good news story.
We have a question from one of our listeners, and by the way, always welcome others to submit questions. You go to GreatPlainsNews.com, GreatPlainsNews.com, and take your pick. Who wants to take this? Corey asked the question, what's the difference between the North Dakota Farm Bureau and the North Dakota Farmers Union?
Oh, boy.
I think maybe you all should take a shot at this one, because the answers will fascinate me.
We're done what time tomorrow?
Brad, you start since you're a grower.
Boy, since I'm a grower and looking from the outside, I guess, from what my experience would be that, Farmers Union is basically aligned with Senex Harvest State. And, of course, they're also aligned with a strong farm program affiliation and things like that. The Farm Bureau on the flip side, of course, their affiliation in North Dakota would be the NODAC Mutual Insurance, and using that as their affiliation. In the past, that they've been more maybe market orientated and want to see that the market is driven by the consumer instead of, through some type of farm program.
Tom?
I actually had a group of Brazilian farmers up that asked me that question a couple falls ago. And I tried to be humorous about it, but they were there. It was kind of the same question, because they were looking at trying to form some type of a group in their country. They didn't really have the political organization, and I said, well, honestly, we have a number of farmers that belong to Farm Bureau, and they typically are a little bit more on the Republican side. And I said, we have a number of farmers that belong to Farmers Union, and they're typically more on the Democratic side. And they kind of got a chuckle out of that because they didn't even know what the Democrats or the Republicans were. So,
Scott, you want to take a shot at that one, or did we cover it?
Well, I work with both groups on a regular basis. I enjoy that affiliation, and Dale perhaps has heard this before. In testimony, sometimes it's best to just say ditto, and that's my comment.
Is it kind of a heritage thing, Brad? I mean, when like handed down, your parents were, your grandparents were, so you stay a member of whatever group they were over the years?
Right on, Scott. And the thing is, though, you got to remember that we're getting to be a small enough faction to where we might have a little bit difference of opinions, but at the end of the day, we all want to be on the same page. We want to promote North Dakota ag. We want to make that this farm life is going to be bigger and better, not necessarily bigger, but I mean just a better lifestyle. And we're starting to see that, and you can see that in what's happening in ag today in North Dakota.
Well, speaking of that, how attractive of an occupation has farming become in the last 5 years for a young person coming up?
Do you really want to talk to me about that, Dale?
Sure.
I have a 27-year-old and 24-year-old, and today I am very, very envious. Very, very envious. In fact, I've been telling some people that, maybe 60 bushel corn, I should probably say wheat because I'm on the grain grow, but I'll say 60 bushel corn because that's what they want to raise, at $3.50 might trim those ears back a little bit, because right now they think that ag is on a skyrocket heading straight up. I mean, where they are at today would have taken me 25, 30 years to get where they are today. And I know we're in different economic times, but it is just fantastic to enter ag right now today.
I think we're all firmly aware that we're in the commodity business, and it does two things for sure. It goes up and it goes down.
Mm-hmm. Scott mentioned, the differences between organizations. The one thing that all of our organizations unequivocally are totally in favor of is federal crop insurance. Yes. And that's been the big difference from when Brad was young.
Exactly.
And now his sons are here. And if there is a disaster, his sons have a lot better coverage than Brad did back in the 80s. And it's the one topic that unifies every group.
Yep.
Federal crop insurance is the most important thing for our guys.
Good point.
Period.
Well, we've been speaking this evening to Mr. Tom Lilja, the director of the North Dakota Corn Growers Association, Mr. Brad Thykeson, who has two sons in their mid-20s, and they think that agriculture is the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Wahoo.
And we have Mr. Scott Rising, the legislative director of the North Dakota Soybean Growers Association, and we thank you for coming on to the show. And we've been having an interesting conversation here.
And these gentlemen will be back, and their growers will be back, and we look forward to keeping tabs not only on what's happening in the legislature as it pertains to agriculture and these commodities, but also get a chance to visit with other folks from around the state about what's happening and keep our listeners up to date. Thank you all.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Appreciate it very much.
Thanks,
all right. By golly, we're out of time for this hour of the Legislature Today radio show. Don't forget, GreatPlainsNews.com. GreatPlainsNews.com is where you can follow us. We also, by the way, have Facebook and Twitter accounts as well, so you can keep tabs on what's happening with us right there. And we always invite you to join us when you're in Bismarck, Mandan. Love having you listening on the air on 550 K-Fire, AM 1100 The Flag, AM 1090 Talk Radio, and the Bakken KTGO. But we also would love to have you join us at the Peacock Alley American Grill and Bar, downtown Bismarck, from the capital city. When you're in town, join us for the Legislature Today radio show. And thanks for listening to another hour.